What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fowled Out. Matt is going to be joining me in just a moment to talk about the Final Four for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then we are going to get into the NFL draft for the first time this draft season. It is April, and that means it is draft season here on Fouled Out. We are going to kick off our draft coverage today by talking about the biggest stories 3 weeks out from the draft, including Shedeur Sanders' draft stock, what the plan is for Travis Hunter, and who we see as some of the biggest risers and fallers over the next 3 weeks. Next week, Matt and I will be back with our annual My Guys podcast. It is one of the best podcasts we do every year. The guys we pick always end up going on to be great rookies and having good NFL careers. So we'll drop the My Guys All-Star team update for you guys next week and then go through our My Guys for this draft. We'll have a gambling and buzz episode, a mock draft, and then a post-draft episode after the draft, which is going to be 3 weeks from when this podcast drops Thursday, April 3rd. So it is coming up fast. I am super excited. I think I could have been doing draft episodes for the last 7 episodes of this podcast, maybe even longer. But I purposely haven't been talking to Matt about the NFL draft too much off the air because I really wanted to save it all for you guys and for the podcast. So I'm super excited to kind of turn on the fire hose today. I got takes I'm going to spit out, and I'm excited to see where Matt falls on some of these guys. But before we get started, reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Let us know who you want your team to draft. My team is drafting 4th, the New England Patriots, and sitting here recording this April 2nd, I have no idea who they're going to take. I think it's Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter if one of those guys is available. But as you'll hear on this podcast, I'm not convinced that either of those guys is going to be available. I've been saying that for months, and I have not been swayed yet. But for now, let's grab Matt. Let's put a bow on the Final Four real quick, and then let's talk NFL draft. Let's go. All right, Matt is here, ready to briefly talk Final Four so that I can finally get on to the NFL draft on this podcast. Matt said in the pre-show meeting, this is the state of a man whose Super Bowl is the NFL draft. And truer words have never been spoken. I have that gone from,
based on life experience.
My team has gone from our Super Bowl being the Super Bowl to this is now my favorite time of year for football. And I think that's just the state of affairs when you have the 4th pick. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Better than Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
That was rough. So many times.
Who did we talk about this with in football this year? Someone had it was a quarterback who had an absolutely insane game and they still lost. And I think it was Josh Allen against the Rams.
I think it was Josh Allen.
That's what it was. He had 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns and they lost. And he was like, God, what do I have to do? And I don't know what's worse, having those 6 total touchdowns and losing, or being Jokic and having a 61-point triple-double. And then watching what Russell Westbrook did at the end of that game and literally blows it 3 different times. Stunning, but it proves my point with Jokic. Every time we talk about Jokic on this podcast, I always say there's no stat line where I'd be super shocked that he did that. Yep. Anybody else drops a 61-point triple-double, I would lose it. And with Jokic, I'm just that's impressive, but that sounds right.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it would have to be triple 60s.
Yeah. It'd be a 60-30-30 or something like that, but enough NBA basketball. My dad is somewhere rolling his eyes oh my God, talk about the NFL draft, but we're getting there, okay?
We have to have our dinner before dessert.
That's the appetizer. Now we have to have salad.
Yeah.
Salad is the Final Four. We've been talking about March Madness on this pod for the last couple of weeks, and our Final Four is now set. We have 4 1 seeds for the first time since 2008. The
Yep.
I wrote down the chalkiest end to the chalkiest tournament that we've ever had. Matt,
Hmm.
to give some context to just how chalky this tournament has been, the NCAA defines an upset as a team that is 4 seeds lower or more winning the basketball game. By that criteria, we had 4 upsets in this tournament. Only 12 tournaments in the last 39 years had fewer than 7. And I believe that this is the fewest we have ever had. Now that we're getting towards the end of it, because when we talked last week, we're like, wow, the first 2 rounds had like barely any upsets. And I think since then, we've had none. I'm pretty sure all 4
Yeah.
upsets occurred in the first 2 rounds of this tournament, and we have
Hmm.
had absolutely none since then. How are you going to remember this tournament? Like, what's your overall feeling on how this is ending?
Nah. I think that's kind of what happens when it is that chalky, like, and that is kind of the risk that you run with like one and done tournaments, right? It's like if you don't get the upsets, then it does kind of start to become a little bit boring. Still, at the end of the day, we've got 2 more rounds left, and um, there's still an opportunity here for this to become less the boring tournament and more like the Cooper Flag statement games, right? Like he has a huge opportunity to put up some really big games in the next couple rounds. And those will stick with us for a while.
Yeah, there's 3 more games left. And I think that we're in for the best 3 basketball games that we've watched this year for college basketball. Like I know
Yeah.
the chalkiness of how we got here maybe has not been the most fun for all of us.
Yep.
It's been fun for me because I had 3 of the Final Four correct. And I had 7 of the Elite 8 correct as well,
I
which
think
like
my first draft actually had all 4 of these, and I was like, well, that's not gonna
it's
happen.
not going to be 4 1s. I said this last week, but I don't know if a super chalky tournament like this is easier to predict or harder, but there's quite a few people in pools
Yeah.
I'm in who just picked higher seeds all the way. And those people
Yeah.
are like in first in the pools because they have the 4 1 seeds. The thing I'm going to remember most about this tournament is just how dominant the 1 seeds were.
Yeah.
And if you look at Ken Pom, the NCAA basketball advanced stats website by Ken Pomeroy, the adjusted net rating of the 4 1 seeds. So these teams are 1, 2, 3, and 4 in Ken Pom. Duke was number 1 with an adjusted net rating of 39.62. Houston number 2,
Hmm.
36.48. Florida 36.05, and Auburn 35.25. The next highest team after Auburn was Tennessee, and Tennessee is 30.8. So you have a gap of these 4 teams to the rest of college basketball that's like 5 points in adjusted net efficiency is pretty freaking big. Like that's the same difference between like
Yeah.
2 and like 20 or like 2 and 25 is 5 points. So I think it's clear looking at the advanced stats and then looking at how these teams have gone through this tournament that these are the 4 best teams.
I think another thing too is like we talked about it heading into the tournament before it started. Like Houston historically has been in position to do this and has not. And they're finally here playing with the big boys, and they have a chance to make a statement.
I feel that way with Auburn as well, where like Houston and Auburn have both been very good teams for the last couple of years, and
Hmm.
they just haven't been able to
Yeah.
get over the hump. So like you have Duke, who's a perennial powerhouse, and you have Florida, who hasn't been good since they had the Al Horford, Joakim Noah teams. I mean, they've
Hmm.
had years, but not as good as they were when they won back-to-back
Not like,
championships.
yeah, not like these teams.
Yeah. So as chalky as it's been, I was thinking about like there's almost no sport where the last four teams are the best four teams, right? We think about the NFL this year.
Yeah,
The Lions got upset and the Lions weren't in it. They were like one of the best teams all
yeah.
season. You know, think about almost any year in the NBA. There's always someone in that Final Four who's like, oh man, I can't believe that team, like, you know, Jokic wasn't in last year's Final Four in the NBA. There, you almost never get the four best teams. And so there's always this what if. Like I hate to keep harping on this for you because I know you're still trying to get over this, but like Lions fans are going to be like, well, what if Aiden Hutchinson wasn't hurt? And what if we had been healthy on defense going into that Commanders game? And
Yeah.
like every single year, though, like the Ravens were one of the best teams this year. And they're like, what if Mark Andrews had just held on to the ball? And
Yep.
there's always like these, everybody always wants to go back and put an asterisk on championships and be like, oh, well, they only won this year because Aiden Hutchinson was hurt. Or like this team only did this because like so and so got knocked out of the first. Like there's going to be no excuses here. These are the four
Hmm.
best teams. We know they're the four best teams by how they've played in the tournament, and we know they're the four best teams in adjusted efficiency. Whoever wins this is like, that is the champ, and there's going to be no going back and being like, oh, well, if this, you know, blah, blah, blah.
I'm sure there will be some individuals who go that route no matter what happens. But at this point, like it's 4 1 seeds. They, like you said, they've got all the numbers to show how they played through the tournament. Like it, it's literally just mano a mano against the best teams at this point.
Yeah.
And there's not a legitimate argument against whoever's going to come out of this,
Yeah.
unless, like you said, something weird happens.
I think assuming this keeps going the way the tournament's been going, that whoever wins this, I'm going to be like, yeah, that was the right champion. They earned it.
Yeah.
And right now, we both picked Duke to win the championship in our
Hmm.
brackets. And I feel like we have backed the right horse because as much of a sizable gap as there is between the top four teams and team five, Duke's
Hmm.
adjusted net efficiency is 3.14 points higher than Houston's, who's number two. And
Yeah.
like that's a pretty big gap as well. And
Hmm.
watching Duke, I think the thing that's impressed me the most is how good they are on defense. And like Houston actually has a better defensive efficiency than Duke does, but just throughout this tournament with Cooper Flag and with Malwalk, the center, the 7-2 guy from Africa that we talked about
Yeah.
last week, it is so hard for you to get anything in the lane against them.
Yeah.
Um, and so I feel pretty good about where we're at. In order to win the pools I'm in, I pretty much just need Duke to win the championship at this point. I have my work pool is a little bit more complicated. I need Auburn to beat Florida and Duke to beat Auburn. But other pools I'm in, it's like, yeah, just if Duke wins, I win. And I feel comfortable with that. Like obviously can't change your picks right now, but even if I could, I wouldn't because the team
With
has
that
been
attitude.
no, the team has been that good. And Cooper Flag has been incredible. I think the Arizona game, Duke versus Arizona, was one of the best games of the tournament so far.
Hmm.
Watching Cooper Flag and Caleb Love go head to head, where Love scores 35 and
Yeah.
Cooper Flag drops 36 and 7. And I was like, the
Yeah.
Cooper Flag's like, I'm not letting us lose this game.
Hmm.
And I think you're right. I think from like an NBA perspective, a lot of us are looking at Duke because they have three guys who are going to go probably top 10 in the draft and being like, okay, show us what
Yeah.
you got here against Houston and against Auburn and Florida. Um,
Yeah.
I had two things on Auburn real quick before we start talking NFL draft. So
Hmm.
want to play a quick game with you because I saw this graphic. We're going to play who has an older starting lineup. So the average age of the starting lineup of Auburn versus multiple NBA teams. Who has an older starting lineup? The Auburn Tigers or the Portland Trailblazers?
I'm gonna go with the Tigers.
Yeah, Auburn's starting lineup on average is older than Portland's. Who has an older starting lineup? The Auburn Tigers or the Atlanta Hawks?
It's gotta be the Hawks.
It is
No?
not. It is the Auburn Tigers.
I want to know after this what their average age of their starting
I
lineup is.
I'll tell you. Who has an older starting lineup? The Auburn Tigers or the Toronto Raptors?
Apparently, it's the Auburn Tigers.
It is the Auburn Tigers, Matt. The Auburn Tigers' average age of their starting lineup is slightly over 23 years old. They are older than Portland, Atlanta, Toronto, Utah, and the Wizards. Actually, funny enough, out of the Sweet 16 teams, 12 of the Sweet 16 teams in this tournament had an average starting lineup age that was older than the Washington Wizards. 12 teams. So their Auburn is 23 years old, a little bit over 23 years old. Portland's about 23. The Washington Wizards are just over 21 years old on average. So and the graphic shows the Nets and the Grizzlies are slightly older than Auburn. The Nets and Grizzlies are about 24 years old on average. So that's just kind of where college basketball is going because it's not just Auburn. Auburn is like the outlier here because the next oldest is BYU and they're slightly under 22 and a half years old. But the graphic also showed the average age of Sweet 16 teams over time, and it is getting older. It is skewing a lot older, except for Duke, who is 19. Yeah. Duke is 19 years old on average. So that was kind of crazy. And then the other kind of just thing I wanted to mention real quick is last week we asked the question, who is going to be the breakout player of this NCAA tournament? And we got our answer. It is Auburn forward and SEC player of the year, Jahani Broome. He came into last weekend and he said, fuck the state of Michigan. I hate that place. And proceeded to drop 22 and 16 on Michigan and then 25 and 14 on Michigan State to beat both schools and knock them out of the NCAA tournament. Also has the moment where he has a weird fall against Michigan State and it looks like he's leaving the game and Michigan State starts coming back and then he comes back in and just like ends it. I'm glad that it was someone like him. Like Cooper Flagg's been great too, but I'm glad it's like someone who's older. You know, he's a fifth-year graduate transfer guy who came to them from a smaller school. And I'm glad that like these real college guys are getting their shine before this is over for them.
Not the Cooper Flagg hasn't specifically earned it. Like specifically hasn't earned it. But like someone like Jahani Broome has absolutely earned a moment like that, right?
Yeah.
Like they put their blood, sweat, and tears into this.
Cooper Flagg is going to have so many more basketball moments in his life in the NBA. And Broome is probably not. You know, maybe he gets drafted. Maybe he finds his way into a rotation. Like maybe he hits a big playoff shot sometime. Like, but it's not, you know, Cooper Flagg is going to be the star of a basketball team for the next 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully.
At the very least, he's going to have a guaranteed contract that is going to give him enough money to live the rest of his life off of if he has a career-ending injury the moment he steps foot on the floor.
Yeah.
Right. Hopefully he doesn't, but like they're sitting in radically different positions. So
yeah, Jahani Broome's probably going to be working in accounting with our good friend Keith from last week's episode. He's like, oh, hey, Keith, you tried to guard me in March Madness like 6 months ago, and now we're working side by side in accounting. Fantastic. So that kind of puts a bow on the Final Four. You know, just watch the games this weekend. We got the two games on
Yep.
Saturday. This podcast is going to come out on Thursday the 3rd, and I think the games are Saturday the 5th. And then the championship is Monday, which, like, my last gripe on the NCAA and college basketball in general is just I feel like this tournament is one of the most poorly marketed sports events we've ever had, where it's like, hey, we have Duke versus Arizona, Caleb Love and Cooper Flag, and everybody's like, oh shit, I want to watch that game. And they're like, yeah, it's on at 10:09 Eastern. Dude, I can't stay up until 1 in the
Yeah.
morning watching basketball. I get up at 5 a.m. for work. I can't stay up that late, man. And that
Yeah.
the best game of the tournament, I think, was Texas Tech and Arkansas went to double overtime or whatever. And Texas
Hmm.
Tech came back from being down 16. And I did not watch a single minute of it because it started at like 10:30 at night. And it's same,
Yeah.
same thing with the Duke game this weekend. I think the Duke Houston game starts at like 9:30. And it's like, at least it's a weekend, but damn, man, you have all day.
Hmm.
Okay, it's 8:49, not as bad, but still, you have
Yeah.
all day Saturday to put these games on. And you're like, yeah, 6:09 and 8:50.
Yeah. Well, and like there's the opposite too of like especially in those early rounds, like you got basketball games going on like all during the workday on Thursday, and like many of us cannot sit down and watch a basketball game during our job.
No,
That
you
is
gotta take that day off, homie.
more than frowned upon. So
You gotta take those days off, my guy. It's
yeah.
like the Friday after the first round of the NFL draft. You gotta take that day off, guys. Holidays. What come on. Trump has signed like 5,000 executive orders. He can't just sign one to give us like the Friday off after the first round of the draft. Throw the people a bone, man.
Just sign an executive order to for like all the potential sports holidays.
I honestly, you want your approval rating to change? And that's a good step. That's a good step.
That is the quickest way to do it.
Yeah. Speaking of the NFL draft, it is time. It is draft season on Fouled Out, the best time of the year on this podcast. The NFL draft is in 3 weeks, Matt, after this episode drops. So, including this one, we're going to have 4 NFL draft podcasts leading up to the draft. We're going to have post draft podcast. And then I'm sure that whatever happens, we're going to be talking about the NFL draft for a while on the pod. I'm super excited to
Yeah.
get into it with you because we've talked about some draft stuff, but not necessarily how we feel about the players. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to turn on the fire hose here because we got stuff to talk about.
Yes. Yes, we do.
For this episode of the pod, we decided that we would do the biggest storylines 3 weeks out from the draft. Where do we fall on these guys? What do we think is going to happen in the next 3 weeks leading up to the draft? Next week, we'll be back with my guys. I'm going to roll out the My Guys All-Star team the beginning of next week. And yeah, it gets better every year, man. But
Yeah.
all right. 2025 NFL draft, biggest storyline number 1. I think probably the thing that is getting the most discussion right now. What happens with Shedeur Sanders? So there are a lot of rumors right now that he will go in the top 3. There have been connections to the Browns with Myles Garrett signing that massive contract and then saying he's very confident in where the Browns are going at quarterback in the immediate future. There's been some buzz with the Giants, although it's kind of died down a bit with the Giants signing Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston over the course of the
Hmm.
last couple of weeks. Some people took that as a sign that they know that Shedeur Sanders is not going to be on the board for them. So a lot of signs pointing at the fact that Cam Ward is going to be the number one overall pick for the Titans and that Shedeur Sanders is going to be the number two overall pick for the Cleveland Browns. I don't buy it, Matt. I don't buy it. What do you think is going to happen with Shedeur Sanders?
Things go one of two ways. He either goes number two to the Browns, or he starts to plummet. I could see maybe New Orleans taking a stab at him. My read on the Giants is everyone's fixating on them bringing in Russell Wilson, but they also brought in Jameis Winston, and that's getting looked over. Are you really gonna draft a guy at number three who's probably gonna be your third quarterback? No, no, you're not. My read on it is they made those moves so that they don't have to reach for a quarterback, so that they can pass on a quarterback and try to like have a passable roster this year and try to save their jobs. I really think like number two is that spot because if he doesn't go there, I mean the fall starts, right? Like I don't know that it necessarily goes as poorly as it did for Will Levis. He will definitely start falling. He might get outside the top 10. Like if New Orleans doesn't take him, I don't really know who else takes him after that. I don't think anyone's trading up for him.
The options I could see for him in the top 10 is I could see the Browns. I don't see the Giants at all. I know exactly who the Giants are drafting. And we'll talk about that in a little bit because it's on our biggest storylines. But I literally I'm so locked in on who the Giants are drafting. Obviously
Yeah.
not the Patriots, not the Jags. The Raiders probably no, because they just traded for Geno Smith, and Geno Smith is like Pete Carroll's guy. Pete Carroll just did a whole soliloquy about how him and Geno Smith stay in more
Yeah.
contact than you would expect. The Jets, I could see. The Saints, I could see because they're in cap hell, and it's kind of the same thing as Cleveland. Like, the problem with Cleveland is you have to get a cheap option at quarterback eventually because you're so screwed with this Deshaun Watson thing. And that's what makes it a little bit more believable. But here's my thing on Shedeur Sanders.
Everything about him.
No, not everything. There are things about him I really like, actually. And I haven't given
There are
my
elements
full
of the game that I like,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah.
I haven't given my full Shedeur Sanders take on this pod yet. So here it is. So there were rumors after the combine that he was brash and arrogant in interviews. And then a lot of reports came out after that saying, oh, it actually wasn't that bad. You know, I don't know what people like executives that were in those interviews were like, I don't know what people were talking about. It was just a different type of interview because he didn't seem super interested in playing for us. Like we felt like we were trying to sell him on us drafting him. And, whatever, that is what it is. You and
You know,
I,
some might say that that is a form of being arrogant.
yes. And I'll circle back to that in a minute, but you and I have had off-field concerns about him for, I think, 2 years now, since basically the beginning of his time at Colorado, throwing coaches and teammates under the bus in press conferences, like he questionable leadership skills at the quarterback position. But I want to put all of the off-field stuff to the side for a minute with Shedeur Sanders. Can we just start with the fact that he's not good enough at quarterback to be drafted in the top 5 of an NFL draft?
Not even close.
He's not a good enough quarterback prospect to be drafted in the top 15 of an NFL draft.
Yeah.
I
don't think he warrants a first round pick.
I just think it's crazy how all of the narrative has suddenly turned into like which one of these three teams in the top 10 is going to take him. Cleveland or the Jets
Hmm.
or the Saints, like we were just talking about. Like, oh yeah, I can see it. I can see it. But
Yeah.
I go through his scouting reports and his film, and I don't see a top 15 quarterback.
Yeah.
He does not have the tools that give him the super high ceiling of a franchise quarterback.
Hmm.
It's just not there. I My comp for him, I threw out Teddy Bridgewater before. If I look at a guy who's currently playing, I think like a high variance outcome comp, so like a good outcome for him
Hmm.
is Geno Smith. And
Yeah. I think when Teddy Bridgewater was coming out, he might have even been a better athlete than him.
yeah.
Like
Well,
better legs.
so my thing on Shador, he he processes well, processes quickly, gets through his reads.
Yes.
He throws with good anticipation, good timing. He protects the football. There's things
Hmm.
about him I like. Like I like those parts of his game, but overall, in a good outcome for him, I see him as a quarterback you can win games with, but not a quarterback that you will win games because of.
Yep.
And that's where I comp him to Geno Smith because I think Geno Smith is the best example of that. Is like you can win games with Geno Smith,
Hmm.
but you won't win games because of Geno Smith.
Yeah.
And I look
I
at
mean, that was Alex Smith.
yeah, I think Geno is maybe a little bit better than Alex.
Yeah.
Um, I look at other like high upside comps for him, and I look at C.J. Stroud, Brock Purdy, and Tua Tagovailoa
Hmm.
because until proven otherwise, I think that there's this group of guys in the NFL who are in that, like, yeah, I can win games with Brock Purdy. I went to a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy because everything else on the team was perfect.
Yeah.
I do not win games because of Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
And specifically with Brock Purdy and people who want to get butthurt about me talking bad about him, just wait until the huge contract kicks in
Yeah.
and then look at what he does without elite weapons all over the place.
Yeah.
Like Shador Sanders' upside is in the what I always call the interchangeable all stars, where you could just put any one of these guys on any one of these teams and probably have the same outcome.
Hmm.
But you put Tua as the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, it's probably not that different from Brock Purdy. Put CJ Stroud as the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins, it's probably not that different from Tua.
Yeah.
They're guys that, again, they can win games. I can win games with them. They're not going to hinder
Hmm.
me winning games, but I will not win games because of them. And I don't know if I can take Brock Purdy and Tua Tagovailoa when someone like Abdul Carter is sitting there looking me in the face. Someone who could legitimately be in that
Hmm.
Myles Garrett, Aiden Hutchinson level pass rusher. I don't know if I can take Brock Purdy when, depending on how you feel about Travis Hunter, I have Travis Hunter very high on my board. When I have a guy who has the potential to have the impact of a Travis Hunter, I don't know that I can take good. I need great. And I don't think that Shador Sanders has that great upside. And then on top of that, we have to add in all the off field stuff.
Yeah.
And people like Todd McShay can come out and be like, well, people around the league are telling me the interviews weren't that big of a deal. But these NFL teams are owned by old rich white men. And I know how old rich white men think, Matt. And they are
Yep.
not going to like Shador Sanders.
Let's also not pretend that his father isn't above getting in people's ears about correcting the narrative, or more accurately, redirecting the narrative. Uh, like I have a really hard time believing that those reports came out, uh, and were untrue about how those interviews went, given the attitude that we've already seen him display that is consistent with those reports. Um, so like eh, if the shoe fits, like come on.
The worst thing with those reports is like they didn't surprise anybody.
No.
Like nobody read that and was like, "What?
Yeah.
Shador? No, no way." Everybody read that and was like, "Yeah, that's 100% believable. He probably is brash and
Yeah.
arrogant." Um, but like gun to your head,
Deion Sanders' son?
who?
Arrogant?
What?
What?
Not not Shador. Gun to your head, you're a general manager or an owner. Who are you trusting more with the future of your franchise? Shador Sanders or Jackson Dart? Or I don't know who your QB3 is. Jackson Dart is uh actually Jackson Dart's my QB2. So I kind of answered the question myself, but
Uh, I kind of have all of the QBs in this class of just nope.
I I think the thing with Jackson Dart, we don't have to spend a ton of time on him, but more of the tools are there with
Yeah.
Jackson Dart, and it's like the
Hmm.
decision making and the consistency and like
Yeah.
I don't know, man. If I look at Shador and I'm like, he probably has a better chance to be good than Jackson Dart, but I don't look at
I
Shador
think
and think,
he's definitely got a higher floor, I would say.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. But Jackson Dart has a higher ceiling,
Yeah.
and if you're an NFL coach and you're like, oh well, I could coach that out of him. I just
Hmm.
trust him attitude wise with the keys to my franchise more than I trust Shador. Because I kind of my QB tiers are like I have Cam Ward. Like I have well, I'll put it this way: I have a first round grade on Cam Ward, and I don't know that I have a first round grade on any other quarterback in this draft.
Yeah.
Although I think three will go in the first round with Jackson Dart being the third. Um, Before we go on to the next question, I just want to say that amazing quarterback name, Jackson Dart. That
Absolutely.
sounds like the quarterback from like a movie about football,
Yeah.
right? It's like Remember the Titans with quarterback, like a remake, the 2025 remake of Remember the Titans with Jackson Dart
Yeah.
as their quarterback. He's like the star quarterback who gets hurt, and Tyler Shuck is the quarterback who has to take over for him. Especially because there's no C or K in Tyler Shuck's last name. There, why is it pronounced like that? He's off my board completely because you pronounce his name Shuck, and it's like Shough. Makes zero sense.
Nobody knows what it means, but it's provocative.
Gets the people going. Question number 2: what happens to Ashton Jeanty and Tyler Warren? So these guys are pretty much consensus high level prospects.
Yeah.
Um, I have Ashton Jeanty as the number 2 prospect in this draft right now, and Tyler Warren is number 4. So they're both in my top 5, but they play what we would call non-premium positions, where
Yes.
Ashton Jeanty is a running back from Boise State, one of the best running back prospects that we've seen in quite some time, and a guy that I
Hmm.
absolutely think lives up to the billing of being an elite level running back prospect.
Yeah.
I like him more than I liked Bijan coming out. The contact balance, the forcing missed tackles, like obviously he's playing at a lower level of competition, but
Every
oh
analytic out there, he just blows everything out of the water that we've seen before.
yeah. It's basically
Just
like people are like, oh yeah, well the competition, blah blah. And it's like, okay, but if you dropped an elite running back in against low level competition, this is
That is what they would do.
literally exactly what would happen. Like, I don't think Quinshon Judkins or Travion Henderson could have put up the numbers that he put up in that
No,
situation. Like, he's
no.
better than these cats. He's better than Omarion Hampton. I've seen this take lately of like, oh well, someone could have Omarion Hampton higher on their board than Gene T. No, no, Ashton Gene T is him, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And then I have Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, number 4 right now. But like I said, non-premium positions.
Yeah.
Matt, what do you see happening with these two guys?
They're both going in the top 15. There's no way. After what we've seen over the last couple of years, NFL GMs they're gonna want their own guys. They're right. I mean, we saw what Brock Bowers did last year,
Mm-hmm.
and you're telling me that there's not gonna be a team out there,
I wrote that down in
maybe one in Chicago, that is gonna be like, I could make good use of that.
I
Um,
actually wrote
you
down in
know,
my notes that Brock Bowers paved the way for Tyler Warren to be a very, very high pick in this
yep.
draft.
There's also going to be a point in time where in this draft, teams are going to be looking at their boards and he's going to be at the top of their board. And maybe there's a bigger position of need, a more valuable position that they could take. But like, what is the gap in talent there? Sometimes that's hard to rectify. So I don't imagine he's going to drop very far.
I agree with that on both counts. Let me give you a little dark horse
Hmm.
for both these guys. So the mocks I've seen so far typically have Gene T at either 6 or 10 going
Yeah.
to the Raiders or the Bears. I have not seen a mock from like amateurs or professionals or anything that has him going anywhere else except for one of those two locations. It was Dallas, and I memed it all year where I was like, this guy's going to Dallas. 100% Dallas is picking him in the first round. I do think Dallas is his floor. Um, the Raiders at 6 never made sense to
Fair.
me, really, with everything else they need. I know Pete Carroll likes to run the ball and all that, but I just don't like with the edge rushing talent and the defensive back talent in the top of this draft. I don't know that they go running back, although from a talent perspective, it's worth it. But and for Warren, I see him. I think his floor is the Colts at 14, but I think he goes a lot higher
That's fair.
because uh, the wide receiver talent in this draft class is not what it's been in years past. Like
Hmm.
it's questionable. We might not see a receiver taken in the top 10, top 15. So if you have him as the best pass catcher on your board, which I do outside of Travis Hunter, I could see you just being like, well, we need a pass catcher. Let's just take him. He's the best pass catcher. Um,
Yeah, I think his window opens at 8.
well, say the draft goes Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, Abdul Carter, and Travis Hunter are the first 4
Hmm.
picks. What about Jacksonville at 5 for either of these guys? The Jags offense was horrible last season with ETN taking a massive step back. I don't know that they know. I don't know that they think that Tank Bigsby is necessarily the answer there. And you have to find a way to make T Law work. And the best this Jags team has been, and the best T Law has been, was when ETN looked like he was going to be an elite running back a couple of years ago when he was like a top fantasy guy
Yeah.
and they made the playoffs. Or, or just they've been trying to find pass catching talent for years. They
Hmm.
finally get BTJ. Why not
Yeah,
add Tyler Warren as well? Like that starts to be a pretty nasty
that's
combo,
possible. Hmm.
you know? I plus Tyler Warren is in that George Kittle mold. I think like some people have been like he's like diet Gronk. I'm like, I see more like diet George Kittle, where he's a really good blocker and a really good pass catcher. He's an all around
Yeah.
kind of guy, like the Gronks and the Kittles of the world. But nobody is. I never comp people to Gronk. Don't ever comp someone to Gronk to me.
I also would caution people on just comping Tyler Warren in general, because like even Gronk, like I don't think we've seen a guy that big move the way Tyler Warren does and explode vertically the way that he does. By all means, should not be as big as he is the way he moves.
Yeah. Comps just all make us feel better because we know kind of what we're getting.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I thought Jacksonville sneaky for either of these guys,
Hmm.
honestly. And then you said Tyler Warren's window opens at 8. That was the other team I wrote down is the Panthers.
Yep.
Bryce
Hmm.
Young really came along at the end of last season.
Yeah.
Has a group of, you know, decent guys with Leggett and Coker and Thielen, but no
Yeah.
true number one. Tyler Warren could be your number one. Give Young that number one weapon and like open some stuff up for Leggett and for Thielen and Coker to like kind of go to work one on one. The more I talk about it, the more I really like Tyler Warren to the Panthers. I don't know how Panthers fans would feel about that, but like
Yeah.
that's starting to become one of my favorite fits. Uh, Along with Ginty to the Bears. Now that they've made improvements along their offensive line, I can't tell if I actually like Ginty to the Bears or it's just because I am an extremely petty person and we have the first pick in our dynasty draft, and the guy who has the second pick is a huge Bears fan. And I just really want Ginty to go to the Bears, and then we draft him number one overall and just dangle
Piss
it,
him off.
dangle it in front of him and piss him off. All right, question number 3. Who takes Travis Hunter and what is their plan? I know
The
who's taking Travis
Giants
Hunter.
take Travis Hunter and they don't have a plan.
I said the same thing,
Did I
except,
nail it?
well, I think there's a plan. The Giants are taking Travis Hunter. This is what we've learned.
I'm sure they think they have a plan, and then he'll get in the building, and then they'll realize that there's no plan.
No, the Giants are taking Travis Hunter not because there's a plan on the field. There's a plan off the field. Ryan Daboll, the coach, and Joe Shane, the GM, are on the hot seat. They are going to get fired unless they give
Yeah.
Giants fans and the owner something to kind of cling to. What is better than drafting the most exciting prospect in the draft and then going into the next season and in the preseason being like, hey, we got neighbors. We got Travis Hunter, and he's going to play both ways and special teams. He's going to get the ball in so many ways. We got a good pass rush with Thibodeau and Burns. We're building something. We brought in a veteran quarterback. You know, the 2 quarterbacks we brought in this offseason, Matt, one of them won the Super Bowl. The other one is one of the only quarterbacks in NFL history to throw for 5,000 yards and 30 interceptions. But 5,000 yards, Jameis Winston. And we have something to be excited about in New York. While on the other hand, the Giants just went through like this awful Aaron Rodgers phase, and nobody wants to hear about the Jets.
In fairness, Jameis Winston's style of football is technically exciting. Technically.
I mean, I love watching him play. I always say that like
something's gonna happen.
Jameis Winston and Brett Favre are the number one and number two quarterbacks in NFL history where they drop back and anything could happen. Literally anything on every single play. It's like it could be a bomb for a touchdown. It could be a screen to the house. It could be a pick six. It could be a fumble for a touchdown. It could be anything. It could be a boat.
Yeah.
And that is exciting. It is no, but I really do think though that Travis Hunter is the prospect in this draft who is going to generate the most buzz before we start playing football. He is going to be the guy that fans are the most excited to see, where it's like, what does it look like? What is he going to play both ways? Does he get touches on special teams? What goes on with this guy? And I really could see the Giants being like, yeah, we need a DB. He's going to play corner and he's going to be installed on offense for 20 to 25 plays a game. And they're going to be like, those 20 plays a game, Hunter and Neighbors on the field at the same time is something that Giants fans, I think, can really sink their teeth into and be like, okay, we're excited. Will it work out? No. Because I say this every year. If you get to the point where you're going to fire somebody, don't be like, okay, you get one more chance. You're going to make one more top 3 pick for us. And if it doesn't work out this year, you're fired. That is not a good way to do things. But I don't see, and this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, I cannot see that pick being Shedeur Sanders. Because what does Shedeur Sanders do for you for Dayball and Shane to keep their jobs this year?
Yeah.
He would have to come in and be awesome, meaning that you just signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston for no reason, because he would have to, like, Shedeur Sanders would have to take over in the first 8 games of the season and be good.
Yeah.
And I don't think you go out and spend all that money on 2 quarterbacks if
No, they
that's what's
specifically
going to
went out
happen.
and got 2 quarterbacks that they believe can play. Right. And you don't do that if you're planning to draft a quarterback in the first round.
Yeah. The other funny thing about the Giants this year is, depending on who their starter is, where I would draft Malik Neighbors in a fantasy draft changes very, very drastically. Like, if it's Russell Wilson, I'm probably would take him in the 4th or the 5th because, like, he put up numbers with Daniel Jones and other horrible quarterbacks last season. If it's Jameis Winston, I'm drafting Neighbors number 1 overall. As bad as Jameis Winston's gonna be, he made Jerry Jeudy like an amazing fantasy wide receiver last season. Like, fuck yeah, man. Let's ride. Travis Hunter minus 225 to be the number 3 overall pick right now as well.
Yeah.
So I 1,000% think that's where Travis Hunter's going. I'm still locked in on the top 3 of this draft being Cam Ward to the Titans, Abdul Carter to Cleveland, and Travis Hunter to the Giants. Because I think if you're Cleveland, you look at it and you're like, well, we were 5-1, 6-1 with Deshaun Watson as our starter, like, not that long ago. That year that they had that absolutely incredible defense. And you're like, hey, you know what would make our defense absolutely incredible is having 2 Myles Garretts. Like, not that Abdul Carter is Myles Garrett, but he has that potential to be the best pass rusher in the league or up there. And it's like, let's make the defense great again and win football games that way. Like back when we had Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith when he was playing really well for Cleveland. Like, let's just do that.
Yeah. The counterpoint to that is right now, their starting quarterback's going to be Kenny Pickett.
The true counterpoint to it is that I am a Patriots fan and I want Abdul Carter. No, you can't have him. Ha 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 ha. Nah. Kenny Pickett won the Super Bowl, Matt.
I,
Kenny Pickett's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. What's not to be confident in?
He is technically a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Yes. Uh, just like Carson Wentz was.
This is true. Last question. Who is the prospect that you think could fall in the first round? So you asked me this the other day. I took this as I have two guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to give a disclaimer before we start talking about this that this does not mean I don't like these two prospects. I just see where they're expected to be drafted, and I think it's going to be lower. So I kind of took this as like, who do you think is going to go lower than everybody expects them to go?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what you have because I think we might have one of the same ones, but I want to hear it from you first.
I did not pick the obvious guys. So I think like Shador Sanders, Tatoria McMillan, Will Campbell, these are all guys that have been talked about kind of ad nauseum the last couple of weeks as like they could go high, they could go very low, like their arm length and separation and blah, blah, blah. So I tried to go with two guys that were a little bit more under the radar. And my first one is Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan. And again, I'm not saying I don't like Colston Loveland because I actually do. I think he has a lot of Dalton Kincaid to his game.
Yep.
And Dalton Kincaid was
that is an accurate comp.
Yeah, he was my guy a couple of years ago. So I do like Colston Loveland. My issue is I have seen him mocked as high as 14 to the Colts. And I consistently see him in the first round. Like I've seen him 25 to Houston. Which I could see, but
I don't think like mid-20s to the end of the first round is inappropriate. But yeah, I don't see him going like to any of the teams that didn't make the playoffs.
I've seen mocks where he is like very late first, early second, which is more where I expect. I would have him late first to mid second, I think is a more reasonable expectation. And that's kind of why I'm like, okay, I just see him going later than other people. And there are a couple of reasons. One is because he's a tight end and he's tight end two. You know, Tyler Warren, we talked about, he is tight end one with a bullet in this draft. Yeah. So if you expect Colston Loveland to go 14, that means that you expect two tight ends to go in the top 14 in a draft that has a shitload of edge talent. I just don't know about that. Two, he is a tight end who is not a good blocker. He can block. He's not a great blocker, which is where the Dalton Kincaid comp goes into effect because he is not an inline tight end. He's kind of like a bigger receiver, which is exactly what Dalton Kincaid is. And he's been a useful weapon for the Bills. But if you're drafting a tight end like super high, you want that George Kittle build where it's like, yeah, he's not only a great receiver, but he also is going to help us in the run game. And Colston Loveland is not that. Number three is he comes from an offense that just doesn't throw much. So he had decent production in college. He played 39 games. He had 117 catches for 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns over 3 years. And you kind of spin it as being like, well, you know, they didn't throw the ball the last 2 years that much, and he still put up decent stats. And that's true, but there's still some level of projection for NFL teams to be like, yeah, he can be a higher volume guy. Especially because reason number 4, he got hurt last year and he's coming off of an injury. So I just combine all of those things and I'm like, I like the prospect. I actually do. Like if the Patriots got him in the second round, I would be excited about it. But I just don't see him going mid first. I see him going later than that. And I
Yeah.
think people are going to be like, whoa, he fell. No, no, this is a reasonable late first, sometime in the second is a reasonable expectation for him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think like late like the last handful of picks of the first round is a reasonable place for him to go. Given his skill set, his role, like his own limitations. Um, and yeah, the injury risk, right? Like that should obviously we don't know the medicals. These teams have their own evals that they've done on these guys and have way more information there than we do. But like sitting here, not knowing, yeah, it's gonna make me pump the brakes a little.
Yeah.
So the first guy that I have is Jihad Campbell.
Just purely
I
purely based on name
consistently
alone.
yes, the linebacker out of Alabama.
Or is it a fantastic linebacker name?
It honestly genuinely is a fantastic linebacker name, despite the fact that I am seeing him mocked in the like between the early and late teens pretty consistently. Uh he's still primarily an off-ball linebacker, right? There's a little bit of him coming off the edge that like people see some promise with and think maybe he can transition to doing a little bit more of that. But like honestly, like he's an off-ball linebacker at this stage of his career. Um, for the last several years, like the off-ball linebackers that have been drafted before the very late first round haven't really worked out so great. Um, and like so I think teams are a little bit wary of taking a player at that position that highly because those players that are valued that way, at least by the media, they don't end up working out. I don't see him having the immediate impact of being a guy coming off the edge to have that value. I think he's a very, very good prospect, and I actually think there's a lot of comparability between him and Jack Campbell. That kind of same range that Jack Campbell went in, not even that early. I think the same range is like Colston Loveland is probably where he's gonna go. Because Jack went a little bit earlier. And that's with Brad. I literally don't care about your positional value, Holmes.
You mean Brad? I listen to the My Guys podcast and know that he's going to be
Yeah.
good because Adam picked him.
Yeah.
Holmes.
I just don't see a team pulling the trigger on him that early. Um, personally think that he would probably eventually pay it off, but there's so much at the NFL level in terms of linebackering too that like it could be a little bit of a slow start, and sometimes teams prefer to just take those guys a little bit later in the draft because that there are guys year after year that like is there a drop off between Jihad Campbell and like the next few guys at that position? Certainly, but like is it so dramatic that like you're not gonna get a guy that you can put in your lineup and play? No. His athletic ability and capabilities on the field don't necessarily align with
the way the NFL is treating that position right now. So I think he probably won't go until like the mid-20s.
Yeah, I'm looking at a mock right now that has him 11 to the 49ers. So, I've seen him as high as 9 to the Saints. So I think that's a
Yeah.
good pick. My other guy, was Jihad Campbell the one that you thought I would have as well? Or are you still waiting?
No. No, I reserved that one. I buried that card in the deck.
Okay, we'll see if this is it. My other guy, speaking of fantastic names, like we've talked about Jackson Dart and Jihad
Hmm.
Campbell, I'm going to give you another
Yeah.
great name. And it is Gray Zabel, the offensive lineman from North Dakota State University.
Hmm.
Is that who you thought it was going to be?
No, no. We had actually talked about this one before. We disagreed on it, but uh you might be able to put together who it is, but
Okay.
I'll
I'm
save
I'm
it.
I'm excited to hear it, but real quick, Gray Zabel. So I again putting him in the I think he's going to go later than you expect him to camp does not mean I don't like him because Gray Zabel had the number one production score and the number two athleticism score for offensive linemen in this draft. Like he's a dog, he's going to get after it, but I constantly see him mocked in the late 20s, like mid to late 20s as a tackle. And I have a massive problem with that because he's not a tackle. He's
No.
not a tackle at all. He's essentially not capable of playing tackle at the NFL level. But
So here's my thing that I don't understand about why they're doing that. He has spent pretty much the entire like draft season working out as a center. Like he's playing center or guard in the NFL. He knows that.
yeah, and I'm the mock I'm looking at right now actually has him as an interior offensive lineman to the Rams at 26. And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, dude, if he goes there, I love that fit for him.
Yeah.
But I think NFL teams are going to be weary on him. And I actually wrote down he is a guard or a center. He might play
Hmm.
both. He has
Yeah.
played tackle, but he is from North Dakota State University. And I think that there is going to be a bit of a stigma there for a few reasons. And I'm going to name a couple prospects who are very near and dear to my heart. One being Trey Lance, who also came from North Dakota State University, was the last first round player drafted from North Dakota State University. And with Trey Lance's results in the NFL, I think it is very fair to question the level of competition when looking at that production score that I mentioned for Gray Zabel. The other name I want to mention, another player very near and dear to my heart, is Cole Strange, who was a guard drafted from a small school in the first round a couple of years ago. Did not work out, has not worked out. And just for shits and giggles, we can throw Trevor Penning in this conversation as well. He was a first round tackle who was drafted out of Northern Iowa, but Penning is a massive human being. He's 6'7". And even so, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's been a fantastic pick for the Saints. So I think you look at like other guys that have come from his school, other offensive linemen from smaller schools who were taken in the first round in recent memory. And it's where you start to get a little bit sketchy. And I think there's going to be some reservations on Gray Zabel. Even though, I mean, he should be analyzed in his own, we should separate him. It's like Ohio State quarterbacks. Like you can't just say everyone's going to suck because they're an Ohio State quarterback, but people do, and people will. And I think that'll happen to him. And I just don't see him
Hmm.
necessarily as a first round pick.
Yeah.
Could
Um,
he play to the level of a first round pick? Absolutely. He absolutely could because I think he's going to be a dog at center or guard, and his mobility, I think, is going to be a big thing for him in the NFL. But I don't know that
yeah,
NFL teams see that the same way.
I think he's absolutely a first round caliber interior offensive lineman. I don't know for sure how he's gonna be at center because obviously like there are additional responsibilities to being a center that it just like I need to see you do it against high level competition to know that it's gonna translate. But he dominated at the Senior Bowl. Like he was lighting everyone up. So I'm not worried about his level of competition. Um, Holding Trey Lance against him is ridiculous because like the writing was on the wall with Trey Lance, and a lot of people chose not to read it. I won't name any names.
Present company not excluded. Hey, you know what? All I said on this podcast was I thought Trey Lance was going to be a good quarterback. I did not say it was going to be in the NFL. Multiple Canadian football teams have put him on their negotiating list for this offseason, which might be the most damning thing that has happened with Trey Lance since he was drafted.
Oh my God.
That's
Yeah.
I don't think I'm coming back from that one. Like, thank God for Jordan Love. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. I mean, he's still in the like replaceable tier. So
Yeah. I mean, after this
um
season, yeah.
uh yeah, I mean, I it's possible. I could see him sliding out of the first round. But with some of the teams in the 20s there, like you said, like he's probably going to be real enticing to the Rams. Um,
Houston.
de de Depending on who else is there, he might be real enticing to the Lions. Um, like,
Commanders
yeah,
need a guard. There's a lot of
yeah,
teams that need offensive line help near the bottom of the draft. The Chiefs are there. I mean, depending
yep,
on where he goes, if he goes to like the Chiefs or the Lions or the Rams, I'm gonna be like, yeah, that was. I could
yep.
see myself sitting here in 4 weeks on our post draft episode and just being like, when we go over picks we like, I'm gonna be like, yeah, Gray's able to the Rams. I really like that pick.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
who's your other guy you could see falling? Now I want
Mason
to know.
Graham.
Oh, I should have saw that coming.
Uh, you had concerns based on play style. I me less so.
Can I give you a not so shocking development that
Huh.
I said was going to happen on this podcast a couple weeks ago? I've done maybe not a 180, but like let's call it like a 110 on Mason Graham, where I like him now that I'm getting into my stuff and doing the film and
Hmm.
the studying and stuff. I like him a lot more than I did a
Yeah.
couple weeks
No,
ago.
I still love his tape.
Yeah, this is what you told me a couple weeks ago.
It's
You're like,
the
yeah,
injury history
yeah,
that I'm kind of worried about with him.
little T Rex arms.
And yeah, I don't even like he was he's beating the shit out of Ohio State. Like I he'll figure it out, right? Um, but it's not gonna matter if you can't stay on the field. And I mean, we consistently see him mocked at 5 to Jacksonville. Like that is the most common spot I see him land in mock
Yeah,
drafts.
I've seen him as high as
Um,
3. I saw him 3 to the Giants in a couple mocks as well.
yeah, I think I don't know that he'll necessarily drop this far, but I could see him dropping out of the top 10. Like if teams have serious enough concerns about like the medical evaluations they've done, um, I could very well see that because like it you're not gonna like that, like you said, the arm length is already a concern, right? You're not gonna take that guy in the top 10 if you also aren't sure he's gonna be on the field. So, uh, but it only takes one team to be like that's our guy. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's not such a big concern, but I think there's a very real chance that his injury history uh ends up kind of hurting him is in that area.
The athleticism a little bit too. That was my main concern on him was like, yeah, lots of
Yeah.
production, not the most athleticism. And then I'm like, yeah, but that's kind of the
Did he do his
classic.
pro day?
I don't know that I didn't see it if he did, but that was kind of my concern on him. And then the more I watch him, the more I'm like, yeah, this is the classic Adam Fowler. I like this guy prospect. Like, I'm kind of shocked he's not a my guy this year because the all the concerns about his body type and all that stuff. Yeah, whatever. He can play football. He can play football. Uh, what else were you going to say? You had another person in mind?
Yeah, not so much that I'm like seeing them mocked hyped, but I guess it's more so I have no idea where Luther Burden is going. Because like he was like a locked in top 10 pick heading into this year.
Yeah.
And now like he some team might grab him at the back of the first, right? I think so much of the decrease in his production has come from the usage in the offense this year. Um, and the fact that they didn't have a quarterback that could like functionally run an offense.
Which is
But
insane because it was the
produ
same quarterback that was there when he was good,
yeah,
you know?
but like he was awful.
It's just funny because
Hmm.
he was a guy we were waiting on for
Hmm.
like 2 years where it was like, damn, if we're like, yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., like a couple years ago, it was like, yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. is good, but this guy might be
Yeah.
better. And people were like
Yeah.
waiting on Luther Burden. Um, and I think it was like 2 years ago on this podcast, I was like, dude, Luther Burden is my guy. This guy's amazing.
Yep.
And he somehow went from that to he's too small and too slow. and like and
Yeah.
can't catch anything. And it's one of the weirder falls from grace that we've seen. Um, I was gonna say shocking upset that he didn't end up being a my guy this year. If you would have told me that 2 years ago, I would have slapped you. I wouldn't have believed you.
Yeah.
I would have been like, dude, that's my guy now. I love him. He's no way,
Yeah.
but he's not on the my guys. I have two receivers on the list for next week, and neither of them is Luther Burden. One of them I have as my wide receiver one, and it's not Tatoria McMillan. And there's another
Uh,
one I really like, and it's not Luther Burden. That's
is it Egbuka?
it's my teaser for next week. It's not Egbuka. Well, you'll see. You'll all see who it is next week. You gotta
I'm
wait.
just gonna start texting you random receiver names until you confirm.
Okay, so we'll be back next week with the My Guys podcast. One of the best podcasts of the year. You don't want to miss that. That's the teaser, is that we're going to go over my wide receiver one in depth. And it's not a lot of the names that have been thrown out there by people. But that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com, and you can find our videos on TikTok, Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It's a long name, but you can't miss it. Enjoy the Final Four games this weekend. We didn't spend a ton of time talking about it today, but I think the last three games are going to be bangers. And then this podcast drops on April 3rd. We are 3 weeks out from the NFL draft, and I'm super excited. Matt, my friend, I'm going to see you this weekend. We're going to go see the
Yes.
Pistons and the Grizzlies in Detroit.
Yeah.
And then
If Ja doesn't get himself suspended for finger gunning.
Oh my God, I was just going to ask you if you saw him point finger guns at the bench while they were losing the other night.
Yeah.
This guy never gonna learn. But all right, my friend, I will see you this weekend.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye, Mom.
Bye, Robin.